Thank you for joining our webinar today. We've got an exciting session for you focused on helping you and your PMO understand how to successfully manage resource availability and demand using Microsoft's project portfolio management solution in the Office 365 Cloud, Project Online. Let's get started. My name is Annie Levand, and I'm with a Microsoft Gold partner called PROJILITY. We've been implementing Microsoft project and portfolio management solutions and developing enterprise-level applications for over 18 years for large enterprises, including everything from engineering, construction, IT, and new product development. PMOs and CIOs typically come to us when they can't easily explain what's going on across all their projects. They don't know what resources are working on what work, and they have a hard time getting consistent reports, metrics, and dashboards to make project-based decisions. We're known for having a 98% on-time, on-budget track record for successfully implementing these solutions for clients. We offer services and solutions in 3 core areas. Deployment and consulting services, PROJILITY's core business. We provide professional services for successfully planning and implementing Microsoft Project Portfolio Management, including Microsoft Project Online, Project for the Web, soon to be Planner, integrating PPM with a line of business applications, and delivering strategic portfolio management solutions to support top-level management planning. PROJILITY also offers a set of pre-built Hammerhead solutions and accelerators based upon 18 years of experience, including a set of Hammerhead products that provide improved access to your cloud PPM data, accelerate access to visual reports and dashboards using Power BI, connect data between your PPM system with Microsoft Teams, and extend connectivity into Active Directory to improve visibility, insight, and control over your work, people, and projects. New to our offerings is Hammerhead Power Pro, a pre-built solution crafted on the foundation of the Microsoft Power Platform and Project for the Web. This offering is designed to help bring some of our lessons learned on this platform to your organization. Finally, PROJILITY provides post-implementation support services, including expert care, designed to assist your PMO with gaining on-demand expertise on the solution supported. We have a full online automated e-learning offering that can improve consistency and adoption for your users of your project management tools. You can learn more about all of our services and solutions on our recently updated website, PROJILITY.com. We have upcoming webinars covering sessions on best practices for project and PPM processes and tools. On April 11th and May 2nd, your project management community will get a ton of great value from our upcoming Microsoft Super Tips and Tricks sessions, where you'll hear from some of our PROJILITY's expert consultants sharing their top lessons learned with this tool. In May, we're hosting in-person project roadshows starting in Austin and Houston, Texas during the week of May 14th, followed by another one in Atlanta on May 22nd. You'll see the latest updates to the Microsoft Project and Planner, learn about Microsoft's AI Engine Copilot, and hear from clients and PROJILITY as to how you can improve your business using these technologies. Space is limited, so the first 30 registrants, so please sign up today. You can register for these events through the Eventbrite link provided or by searching Eventbrite PROJILITY in your browser. Hope you can join us for these upcoming sessions. All videos from this and previous series are available on our best practice playlist listed on YouTube. On this page, topics range from managing your digital transformation program using PPM technologies to integrating PPM with agile line of business applications. Feel free to subscribe and access the library at any time and share with your colleagues. If you have any questions as you watch the presentation, please log them in the questions and answer manager at the top of your team screen, and we'll review those towards the end of our session. With that, I'll hand the presentation off to Amanda Kuhlman, Director of PPM here at PROJILITY. Amanda, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Annie. Let me get I'm really excited to talk about resource management today. It's one of my favorite topics. So I'll go ahead and share my screen and I will get started. So we are going to cover the following agenda during the webinar today. So first, we're going to take a look at Resource Center, which is where you'll start a lot of your reviews of capacity planning and analysis, and where you can review your resource and all your enterprise resources. Then we'll take a look at an in-flight project schedule for resource demand, which includes the Microsoft project views for how to display over-allocations. And as a part of that, we'll talk about the different options in order to correct those over-allocations as well. Then we'll take a look at operational projects and what that means. And depending on your organization, there's many, many different methods for you to capture resource management. And so we'll kind of talk through how you can capture them in this alternative approach. Then we'll take a look at capacity planning views in Project Online, which just aggregates all of the assignments across all the projects in one place. and then take a look at some resource reports and heat maps in Power BI. So the starting point of our resource journey is Resource Center. This is where you can display, and it displays all of the enterprise resources that you have permissions to view. Different views, different metadata can be captured about them here. But for our purposes today, this is also where you can edit their assignment information. The assignment information is how will project calculate their assignments, how will it schedule their tasks, and how will it calculate, importantly, when they are over allocated. In your enterprise resource pool, there are 3 different kinds of resources that you can have. You can have your work resources, which require work or effort in order to complete the task. And that's where we'll primarily be focusing our attention on today, because those are the resources that have the demand against them. Material and cost, we won't be talking about so much today because those are primarily cost driven and don't interact as much with the work elements. But the generic and named you see down at the bottom, both of those can be used in different capacities for being able to understand your team's capacity for both planning and in-flight project work. Availability. Availability is determined by looking at a resource's capacity compared to their demand. Usually it's looked at within a certain time frame. Again, depending on your organization structure, sometimes that I have seen that visited weekly, where there's a weekly meeting to review what's been done in the last week and what's forecasted in the next 2 weeks using the capacity planning views in Power BI reports. Or if that's a monthly process that your team engages in, typically getting in some type of cycle will help your team in being able to forecast that resource work. And when you look at availability as well, you have options and to look at it within the time frame that you would like. It could go down as much as day to day or as much as year to year, and several options in between. The capacity is the number of hours a resource can spend on project work determined by the calendar and the max units of that resource. And I do specifically say project work here because you can capture only project work and project online, or there are some options to capture 100% of your resources time. But for our initial demo here, we're focusing on just capturing the project work in project online. The second component to that is demand. And this is the number of hours a resource is committed or scheduled to the current project work. First is defining your resource's capacity. So this is defined by looking at the resource's calendar, the enterprise calendar that's defined by your PWA admin, and defining a max units, which is in percent of the time that the percent of their time that you are looking to track in Project Online before they're considered over allocated. Project will let you schedule resources even though it causes them to be over allocated. So this number does not put a cap on that, preventing them from being scheduled, but it is a flag almost in order to indicate when they've crossed that threshold, and it will send you, or it will show you a little red man in your schedule to indicate over allocation. So some examples below. So we have resource A, who has a standard calendar of 40 working hours per week. And we have assigned that resource 100% max units. The capacity for that resource per week would be 40 hours per week before they're considered over allocated. Resource B has again, that same 40-hour per week working calendar, but they have defined a max units of 50%. So we are only looking to track 50% of their time in Project Online, and we are going to make the assumption that the other 50% that we're not capturing in Project Online is spent doing operational activities, admin, kind of that business as usual type of work. So we're saying from project work, they have a capacity per week of 20 hours. We're just taking that 40-hour calendar times the 50% to get 20 hours. Resource C has a 20 working hours per week and has been indicated to be 100% tracking of project work. So they have a capacity of 20 hours. And then finally, Resource D has a 20-hour working week as well, but they are only tracking 25% of their project work, which gives them about 5 hours per week of capacity before being over allocated. For our demo today, we're primarily going to focus on examples for resource A and resource B, where we're working with a standard 40-hour working week calendar, or 40-hour per week calendar. Demand is calculated by the work that's assigned to the enterprise resources on tasks within the schedules. And so this is an example of the resource assignment view that we'll also take a look at today, where it breaks down per resource the projects and then the tasks that they are scheduled to work on. So those specific resource assignments, along with the specific assignment details for that resource, such as the work, the dates, what's actually been done and what's been remaining. When looking at your resource availability, another important factor to consider is booking type. This attribute is also, it's an out of the box as part of that assignment information. And booking type helps in your resource management to determine if the resources are committed to that project or proposed. For each resource, you can set a default value. So if I have a resource that is committed, it indicates that that resource is committed to the project work, and it will automatically show up in all of your capacity planning views. As a project manager, if I assign a resource that's committed to my schedule, it will by default mean that they are committed to the work and scheduled, and I want that to show up. I will say committed is the default booking type, and it's also the standard booking type. But as an alternative, you can have your resources be proposed. And this indicates that that resource is tentative, or maybe you're using it only for planning purposes on a project. The project manager wants to get ahead. They want to have some resources on the schedule. That way, whenever the project is ready to begin, all they have to do is flip that booking type to committed, and off they go. They don't need to rebuild their schedule, make any modifications there. The booking type is set per resource in each project schedule. Proposed assignments or proposed resource work will not show up in the capacity planning views by default, but you can toggle it on if you do wish to show the planned work so that you can overlap your committed work with that planned or proposed work as well. The first example resource is resource A, and we are going to look at Deborah Berger. She is going to be our shining star for today. She is as a project manager in our system. So we're going to take a look at her assignment attributes. Her calendar is a 40-hour work week calendar, and her max units is 100%. So for Deborah, she can work 40 hours per week on project work without being over allocated. Our second resource is Kelly. She also has a 40-hour working week, but we have updated her max units to be 50%. So 20 hours per week is her capacity before she is over allocated. So we're going to jump into our project online system and jump straight into Resource Center, because this is primarily where you will start to either look, update, or analyze your resources. So in my Resource Center, I have my resources grouped by role. The Resource Center is where you can assign attributes so that you can group and find your resources much more easily than you would if it was a straight list of alphabetical order. And I have selected both Deborah and Kelly here, since they are our examples for today. So I'm going to click Edit so we can take a look at how to update or modify some of their assignment properties. So first, we're going to take a look at Deborah. In this edit resource, again, you do need the proper permissions in order to edit your resource information. So depending on your role in the system, you may or may not be able to edit your resources. If I scroll down here, move past this information to the assignment attributes, the assignment attributes are where you can assign that base calendar to your resource. So we have the standard calendar here. We have that default booking type. So any project I assign Deborah to, she will be committed by default to that project. And then if I scroll down here, we can assign her standard rate. So if looking at month over month time-based costing from a labor perspective, is a metric you're looking to track, then indicating the standard rate for that resource, and project will calculate. And then here's where you can define the max units. The default for all of your resources when they are first added is 100%. So it will be that way for your entire resource pool unless you manually come in and modify this percentage. So then we'll continue and we're going to take a look at Kelly's assignment profile. So if I scroll here to her assignment attributes, she has that same standard calendar, that 40-week calendar, 40-hour per week calendar. She's also committed to any projects she's assigned to by default, but we've updated her max units here to be 50%. We're going to take a look at a specific project. So from Project Center, we are going to open up this catalog publishing project, and we are going to assign our resources to that project. I do already have it open here, so go ahead and take a look. So this project is in flight, and we are primarily going to focus on this task here, task 108. Right now, there are no resources assigned to it. You can see the rest of my tasks do have at least some generic resources assigned. And there are, as always with projects, several options to assign your resources. But in order to see how project will schedule those resources for me, I am going to use the split view. In my view ribbon, if I scroll to the split view section and I check this checkbox for details, it creates this split view where at the top, I still get the entire visibility of my schedule. So I can still see it from a holistic perspective. But down in the bottom, it is focusing or zooming in on only one task, the one I have selected. As I click through, you can see that those details change depending on what I have. So for this task, develop campaign release schedules, currently don't have any resources assigned. What I'm going to do is assign first Deborah to this task. So I'll just type her name in this bottom section here. And it automatically puts her at 100% units because that's her default. And it assumes the amount of work for her. This task is a fixed duration task. It's 3 days of duration. So it's going to assume that she's 100% on this task over that 3 days. Next, we're going to add Kelly, assign her. She's a 50% person, so 50% over those 3 days is going to calculate her work to be 12 hours, which makes sense if we look at the numbers between the two that it's half. Immediately upon assigning those, my indicator pops up to show that there is a task over allocation here. So there are several ways in project itself to view the over allocation, to really see where that's coming from. This is a 3-day task, but I can get a bigger picture of what's going on with this task. And the first view we'll take a look at is the resource usage view. Hide my split view here. I have pre-filtered this view to only show me Kelly and Deborah. There are many other resources also on this project I filtered out. But the resource usage view on the left shows you the resource name, and then underneath that, it shows you their resource assignments with the total work for each assignment. And then on the right-hand view, it gives you a time-phased look at how project has scheduled that work. So in this view on the right, I'm looking at it by weeks, but you can modify again that view if you prefer to look at it in months or quarters. And looking at this resource usage view, there is a lot of red going on, and red represents over-allocation. So I can see for Kelly at this line here, over-allocated, and as I get into this bar here that's shaded with that gray background, any cells that have a red number also represent over-allocation. When you're working in the enterprise environment, this view here will show you here the tasks within this project schedule and the assignments with each. But if you'll notice down at the bottom, there is an option to expand to show you other projects and commitments. This is a setting that you set in project, and I do have a slide I'll show you if you don't see this option in your schedule, how you can get it. But this option, I can expand and it will show me the other project assignments in the enterprise for this person in the same time frame. So this allows me to show for Deborah, these are the 2 tasks she's assigned to here. And these are the other 4 projects that are asking time of her or demanding time of her. And I can see at a high level, just a project level, but where that is. And so for this project, I can see it's this PFP project here that is causing most of her allocation in this time frame. Another view that you can use that looks at just one individual resource at a time is called the resource graph. The resource graph looks at one resource at a time, and this is looking at it day to day, but again, you have the option to modify that. And this shows you what the peak assignment units are for the resource. So the task we scheduled Deborah to had a date range from April 11th through April 13th. So I zoomed in this view to look within that week. And what I can see here is that for that Monday, she is 70% kind of used in that day. But as we get into Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, it increases to 170%, which, as you can see in this red bar here, indicates her over allocation. And this is a good way to zoom in on one resource at a time so that you can look kind of month over month, week over week in order to see those spikes. So now that we know we have over allocation, what can we do to correct them? There are 4 different methods that we'll walk through. The first one is adjusting a task's timing. So in our schedule, we only have a 3-day task there, but what we can do is we can adjust the task, we can delay it, we can add some lead time or lag time to the predecessors for that task to shift when it does occur. But it would also maintain the duration, the work estimates, the resource assignment estimates on that task. This works if you prioritize your task and you can delay the lower priority ones out into the future. There is a priority field that you can use in your schedules itself if you'd like to use that to indicate your task's priority, or it can just be a conversation that happens outside of the tool. So to adjust our task timing, I'm going to jump back to my schedule. And if I take let's scroll back down to task 108. With this red man here, one way I can adjust the task timing is to right-click on this indicator. And I have the option to fix in the task inspector. Now this option allows me to see why the task is over-allocated, which we already know, it's because of Deborah. It can also it takes you to other views to again view the over-allocation, figure out where it's coming from, but we have again also have done that. One option here is to actually move the task to the next resources available time. You do click this button, you are giving project a lot of power in order to shift it to not only within this one project schedule, but you can shift it to its the next availability for that resource overall. So we have our dates in April here. If I do click that, you can see it does shift the next task. So really, Deborah would not be available to actually complete this work until January. So that's a pretty big shift. So we're going to undo that change. But you also have the ability here to, again, work with your predecessors to add lag or lead time to shift that task forwards or backwards to help resolve the over-allocation. If you cannot adjust the task timing, then you have the option of updating the resource availability. So extending the availability period, or you can specify additional unit availability. We have assigned our resources to be assigned to that task with their default assignment unit. So for in Deborah's case, that's 100%. If that task, for example, won't take 100% of her attention, we have the ability to lower her dedication to that task to a different percent units just for that task so that it might lighten her workload a little bit. And if you do have resources that are constantly being over allocated, then you might want to consider adjusting their calendar or their max units in order to prevent them from flipping that over allocation flag so quickly. So in order to update that resource availability, I am again going to use that split view. So again, I'll check that details box and bring it here, where we can see and modify the assignment units for Deborah. She's assigned 100%. So we are going to lower it. She doesn't need to be full-time to 50%. I'll go ahead and click OK. Well, that didn't work, so let's do it at 25%. And that did resolve the over-allocation. So if in reality that she is not going to be dedicated to that task full time, only about a quarter of her time can be spent, then you can make that adjustment to resolve that. Now, when I did update that assignment units, since my task is 3 days and it's a fixed duration task, it adjusted the work for her. So she's not still working that 24 hours. It now lowered that work value down to 6 hours. If you do make adjustments like that in your schedule, do make sure you pay attention to task type to make sure there's not other kind of ripple effects in your schedule. That did resolve our over-allocation for Deborah. But since we have other methods we would like to try, we are going to revert that change. The third method to correct that over-allocation is to reassign the resource. So for our first two options, we still tried to keep Deborah on the task. Maybe she can really focus her attention. So we tried to adjust the task, but now we need that task to get done within that time frame. We need to look at our resource pool and figure out who else can fill that role. Or you can divide that work between Deborah and another resource to lighten her workload. In the schedule, in our case, we are going to just replace Deborah. So I'm going to replace her down in this split view, the bottom section. And just in her resource name column, I am going to just choose the drop down and select Thomas and click OK. So we're doing just a full replace of her. And so it will remove that then from her allocation and the assignment views. And Thomas is not over allocated within that time frame since our indicator did disappear. Our fourth option here is a manual work reduction. So in this situation, we can either decrease the task's duration if there hasn't been any actual work charged. We're still just planning the task at this point. Or we can manually reduce the remaining work if you do have actual work on it. This method requires the most manual intervention to your schedule because you're looking at it and you're kind of tweaking the task. You're tweaking the duration, you're tweaking the work, the remaining work, and you're really trying to get it to reflect more of what might be happening. And so in our schedule, you do have the ability to modify these work values as well if you do need to decrease the work instead of adjusting the percent units. So we can adjust her work. Oh, forgot to revert it back to Deborah. There we go. So we can reduce the work here and click OK. That would resolve my over allocation because now it is going to spread that 6 hours of work across that 3-day period, meaning she's going to do less amount of work per day. So this can be a way that you can modify either the work or the remaining work, again, if that task has actuals on it, in order to resolve that over allocation. When we were in the usage view, I showed the other projects and commitments. If you do not see that in your version of project and you would like to, you can do that by working with your options in your version of Microsoft Project. So this is set for everybody differently. So if you update it, your other project manager would have to do it on theirs. If you go to your options and manage accounts, you should have an account created for your PWA or Project Online profile. And then for the login screen, once you select it, when you're in this account, you need to choose an account. And what this will do is it will prompt you with this login box when you launch project again. So first going to set this configure account option and choose an account. And then when you log in, will have the profile that indicates your project online account with the checkbox here to load summary resource assignments. If this is checked, you get the other projects and commitments. And then once it prompts, then again, just as we showed before, that's the section of data that you would get. So far, we've been focusing on capturing only project work. Like as, for example, with Kelly, she's a 50% person. So we are saying we're only capturing 50% of her time at Project Online. So the method to do that is what we've been talking about so far, identify the max units to indicate the percent of project work that we're going to capture for her. If your organization is looking to capture the full utilization of the resources, including that non-project work time, one option to do that is to do timesheets, to capture timesheets. That primarily captures only the actual work that they spent in those administrative categories. If you are looking to forecast out the percentage of time spent on those, then what you would do is set the resources to be 100% or leave it since it's the default for all of your resources. Operational or maintenance projects, bucket projects, a lot of words for the same thing, can be set up to capture those non-project activities. In order to do that, you do need to create a new project schedule. So if you do decide to implement operational projects, you do need to still have a project manager who is going to maintain that schedule. At least the setup of it and maintenance won't be as much as a typical project schedule generally. So you would create your new project and create tasks to indicate those activities. A lot of times I see this in IT specific groups. So I have an IT maintenance project here, or customer service, inventory management, IT operations, and facilities. And updating the duration of that to represent the entire time frame that you're looking to capture. Generally, I recommend establishing your operational projects to run only for a year and then closing out that project and opening a new one for your next year. With these long duration projects and a lot of resource assignments on it, it's always good to kind of keep those at a shorter time frame if you can. It also allows you to kind of reevaluate to make sure that you don't have any resources that are maybe overflowing into the next year. Maybe they don't need to be spending time on that. So this project, you can see it starts on the first of the year and it spans for 260 working days, which takes it all the way through the end of the year. And then you would assign resources to the task. So in this example, we've only assigned Deborah for the moment, but we have Deborah assigned. And then in this split view here, just as we were manipulating that with the project, I would indicate that she is 10% going to spend her time on customer service activities. You can absolutely get more granular here if you would like to, but that's definitely a balance that your team needs to make and what you need to enter into the schedule versus what you do get out of it for operational projects. Operational projects also allow you to get more from a reporting perspective because this project has its own project level metadata, task level metadata. You have the ability in reporting to create some metrics on what percent of my resources time am I planning on them to spend on project versus operational? And if your team is doing timesheets or tracking actuals, what time did they actually spend? So you kind of get both of those metrics in terms of your planning and then comparing that to where the team did spend their time to see if you need to make any adjustments. So now we are going to focus on how to view and analyze that information that you did make and modify in your project schedules. So the first section of views is the capacity planning views. These are the out-of-the-box views of Project Online, and they are starting in the Resource Center. So you would choose the resources that you want to analyze, and then you would click on capacity planning, and we're going to take a look at 4 of these different views. we go. So I believe, yes, I still have Deborah and Kelly selected. So I'm going to choose capacity planning. And in the top toolbar here, you have the selection of many different views. We are going to primarily take a look at these bottom four. The top one will only be used if your team is using resource engagements, but we're not focusing on that one today. So we're going to take a look at the resource utilization view. There we go. The resource utilization view allows you to view the capacity and demand for teams as a whole. So in this view, I only have two resources here, but I have one capacity line, which represents the capacity of my entire team. So I can see, and then also in the top up here, you have the ability to choose the time scale that you want to look at. In this case, I'm choosing to look at it by month. And you can set the date range or the time frame that you want to see. Now, how far backwards and forwards you can go is set by your PWA admin, but it is 12 months forwards and 12 months backwards by default. And I also can choose to, I'm choosing to look at it in hours, but you have a couple of other options here as well. So in this, since we're looking at it in hours, I will take a look at the month of March. So as a team, collectively, they have 276 hours of capacity. And I can see immediately that my bar is above that, which means that as a team, they're over allocated. As I look into April, they're mildly under allocated, pretty under allocated. And then as we get into May, we're pretty good allocation here. And then as we get into June, I see that the team has a lot more availability to spend on work. If you hover, you can see it does select each one. You can click on them as well. Below each view in the capacity planning, there will be a details. It does show you the same information across them, but it's pivoted differently depending on the view that you are in. So this shows me per resource, the availability, which, as we reviewed, is the calculation of their capacity, so determining that max units per month, and then an aggregate of their demand or their assignments. So for the month of March, 184 hours of a capacity, 254 hours of project assignments, which means we have an over allocation for Deborah of about 70 hours. And we can see that month over month, and then we can also see that for any other resources that we've selected. Our next view here will be utilization by project. So the next step in my analysis is to, now I know my team's over allocated for the month of March. From a resource manager perspective, I know they're over allocated for March. What project is taking up the most of their time? So if I look here, it's this yellow project here, which is my PFP project. So I can, that's what is taking up my team's time. So now I might need to analyze my other two projects. Where is that PFP project in its project lifecycle? Do I need to make some project level priority modifications to shift those project dates forwards or backwards? And then if you look down below here, again, it's the same type of information, only it's looking per project. So on PFP, there's Deborah. On ABL, there's Deborah assigned to it. And if I scroll down a little bit here, for catalog publishing, I have both of those resources assigned, and it tells me the amount of demand per month for each one. Next, we're going to look at the remaining availability view, which is my favorite view because it very quickly shows me just visually who is over or under allocated. In this view, each resource gets their own bar instead of it being more of a team view. And I can see here, I'm looking at for my 0 line because this line represents a perfectly allocated person. That's the goal. I don't know if it ever happens, but perfectly allocated person. And any resource bars that are below that line represent over allocated because they have more work assigned to them than they can complete. Any bars above represent with availability, since that's the focus of our view. So as I look at February, I can see, and if you hover, you do get the exact numbers in the view that Deborah is over allocated and Kelly is under allocated, and you get your metrics there. Just quickly at a glance too, I can see in March, Deborah is pretty severely over allocated. Then as we get into April, Deborah has some bandwidth. She's again over allocated in May. In this view, I think it's it personally pops in order for me to see who has space and not at an individual level. And then if we scroll down, this is the same details panel that is in the utilization view. So this would show you the same details there. And the last view here is the work by resource. And this view, again, is really if you're drilling down and you want to focus on the individual resources of your team, then you can see here and you can see there's a bar again per resource and you can see the total work that they're assigned to. But this view is also really good for seeing if I'm looking at my team of many resources, are they pretty balanced across them? Or do I have one team member, as we do in this case, Deborah is working a lot and Kelly is not working a lot? Taking, of course, into account their max units differences, but this allows you to see if you have a general standard over allocation for your team, that all of these bars should be a pretty even if you're looking for a balanced team workload. These views focus primarily on your resources and then your project level detail, since it does aggregate that up. But if you want to dig into more details, then you have the ability to look at those specific resource assignments to drill down even one step further and look at the specific tasks that they're assigned to. So this view shows you the resource name, and then it's grouped by project after that, along with all of the tasks that they're scheduled to work on within that project. And this shows you only their piece of the task. So if, for example, there are several resources assigned to this client review a project schedule, this only shows in this grouping Deborah's piece of that assignment, of that task. And then it shows you other details as well about the work that's been assigned to her, along with the dates. And then on the right-hand view, you have the option, depending on how you like to view the timeline, you can look at it either as a Gantt chart to see when those tasks overlap with each other, or you can view it in terms of time phase data, which will actually show you the amount of planned work per day, toggle these ones off, that is being planned or forecasted. They'll show you a time-based grid on the right-hand side. So in addition to using some of the out-of-the-box views, you can leverage Power BI to output your resource availability as well. So this is the Hammerhead reporting pack. It's a predefined set of data model and reports, but we're focusing primarily on the resource dashboard. So if we look at the resource availability, I can see in this heat map here, quickly at a glance, again, who is over-allocated and who has availability to work. So my numbers and cells in red, like Ray here for the month of July, he's over-allocated pretty severely, 340 hours over, which means about 3 times over-allocation. And then I can see I have Deborah, who's been our example, who is also showing as over-allocated for the first couple of months, and then she becomes more allocated as we progress. In this view as well, if I want to take a look at Deborah, I can right-click and drill through and focus on her specifically. I can come here and I can see exactly where she's over-allocated. So this shows me a breakdown of her work. What is she working on by program, primarily? But I also have the ability to see burn downs from a work and expense perspective just from her resource lens. You can also use reporting to show, for example, the assignments from operational and project work. All of that can be pulled into Power BI and have some different dashboards created to, again, use that project level assignments to pair with your resource assignment data. But this view shows me the program and then the project that she's scheduled to work on, along with some of those same resource assignment level details that we saw in the resource assignments and capacity planning views. And then I have the ability to look at the work across. So per month, I can see what were they planned to do and what's remaining to do month over month. And then I can really drill down in terms of Deborah again to see all of the projects, all of the tasks with the estimated time frame for her month over month. This can help with driving some prioritization and some reallocation balancing. So a typical resource analysis scenario starts in a resource center. So you're bringing on a new project, you're planning for it, you have some dates or potential dates for the project, and you can select the resources that you would like to be part of that project team. I always recommend starting with that analysis first so that you can get an idea of if and when you have the bandwidth. So going into the capacity planning views in Project Online or using Power BI reports to view and analyze the capacity of the team or those resources who have the correct skills in order to meet the need. Then you can drill down to any resources to understand the over-allocations of them. Again, we have a couple of different views in order to give you that information. And then use assignments if you need to drill down for specific tasks. And then decide on that method of over-allocation. And then each of those, you have to work within the related project schedules to make those adjustments and those modifications as we did in our catalog publishing project, and then publish them back up so that it can be visible in reporting. And that does conclude my agenda for today. So Annie, I will pass it back to you.
Just taking back control here. But that was a great presentation, Amanda. We're now going to take questions as soon as I get this up here. We actually do have a couple questions in the queue. For the operational project schedules, if a manager of operational project uses tasks that are 260D as shown, timesheet submittals will play havoc with the replan, either duration, work, etc., depending on task type. If these are managers of the operational schedules are not trained PMs, what do you recommend? The goal is to forecast non-project demand for forecasting resources, including vacation, O&M, and planned activities.
So for the operational projects, it is important to have at least some training in order to keep that updated. And I agree, you can't just set it up at the beginning and then let it run itself, especially if timesheets are used. There will need to be more of a monitoring if there's timesheets to have the project managers or whoever is owning that schedule to go in there on a recurring basis and almost reforecast. Otherwise, it will extend the durations of the tasks past when you need them to. And if you are looking to forecast your non-project demand and you're using timesheets as well, if you use it's the administrative tasks in there, that and the team members put that in their timesheets ahead of time, that rolls into their resource calendar so that their capacity would lower. If, for example, at the end of March, they're taking a week vacation, they put that as admin and submit and it's approved, their capacity would show as 0 for that week.
Thanks, Amanda. And here's another question from Mars. How do you track the amount of FTEs as a project demands versus what a functional manager actually allocates in FTEs to the project?
This is a great question. In the capacity planning views, we looked at it in hours, but you can actually adjust that to FTEs, or in your Power BI reporting, you can kind of convert it to FTEs. But having the project demand in a functional manager, if there is some conflict in terms of what that allocation should be, then Generally, that's a conversation that needs to happen outside of the tool, and then that decision to be made in the tool, because the tool can only do so much. So if the project manager puts more demand in there versus what the functional manager does, that's not something that the tool can handle itself. That's something that needs to be a conversation.
Here's another question from Cam. What is the best report to provide to resources so they're aware of their allocations?
I recommend creating a custom or a more focused Power BI report where it's looking at only one specific resource, very similar to the time-phased view that I showed, where it shows their projects and then the tasks underneath of it in that time-phased manner. And they would be able to kind of self-serve in that report in order to see what's upcoming. And you can do some calculations in there to show, for example, things that are late are going to flag as red so that they can quickly see what are they behind schedule on and what has remaining work left.
From Anonymous, is Project Online separate access from Project Desktop? I don't see capability or capacity planning views within Microsoft Project Plan opening in the desktop.
The views that I showed should be available in Project Desktop as well. Open up Project. Oh, I see. The capacity planning views that aggregate at the enterprise level, yes, that is available only in Project Online in the browser version. That would primarily be your interface, and that aggregates the information that you submitted or entered into your project plans. But the capacity planning views are your viewing option. But there are views in Microsoft Project where you can see that, but it really focuses on just that one project with the exception of the expand other project and commitments.
And it looks like that's all the questions we have. So we'll continue with our presentation. So how can PROJILITY help you? If you're looking for assistance with project or PPM, think of us. We can help you with consulting, training, and adoption services to address your most pressing challenges with Microsoft solutions. Additionally, if you're looking to up your game with either Project for the Web or Project Online, we offer a series of pre-built solution accelerators that can make any implementation that much better. Reach out to us to explore any of these options or services to see how they could add value to your organization. Here are some good resources for you and your team if you'd like to learn more. You can visit our YouTube page, which has a set of playlists ranging from client testimonials and best practice videos to a full library of focused recordings on topics like resource management, portfolio management, and project execution. Next, you can head over to our shiny new website at PROJILITY.com. It offers lots of great content, including a Learn section with blogs and videos for your PMO and PPM community. We'd also recommend you visit the Project and Planner group on LinkedIn, which now has over 27,000 active members of a great interactive learning community. This is a public domain resource that everyone in the community has access to. Finally, if you have a specific need or questions, reach out to us. You can send us an email at info@PROJILITY.com and we'll set up time to talk through your needs, challenges, goals, and work together to develop a solid solution to meet your requirements.